Hello, podcast fam. I am thrilled to share some exciting news. My book, Sow, Grow, Lead, is officially live on Amazon. This book is more than just my story of starting a nonprofit and building a peanut butter factory in Malawi. So trust me, the ups and downs of that journey are worth the read. It's also packed with practical strategies to help nonprofit leaders like you tackle challenges with clarity, courage, and a whole lot of heart. If you've ever wondered how to turn your vision into reality, navigate the inevitable hurdles, and build something meaningful, whether in your organization or in your own life, this book is for you. I'd be so grateful for your support in spreading the word. Grab your copy of Sow, Grow, Lead in the show notes and on Amazon today. Let's keep sowing seeds of impact together. Welcome to the Lead with Heart podcast, which is dedicated to nonprofit leaders who are passionate about making a difference. I'm your host, Haley Cooper, and I'm thrilled to have you join us on a journey of growth, inspiration, and transformation. At Lead with Heart, we believe that leading with heart means embracing empathy, compassion, and authenticity in every aspect of our work. It's about putting people first, fostering genuine connections, and creating a positive impact that goes beyond numbers and metrics. In the nonprofit world, it can often feel like we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. The challenges are immense, and the road can be lonely. But here, you're not alone. This podcast is a community where we support each other, share our stories, and learn together. Each episode will dive into personal and professional development topics tailored specifically for nonprofit leaders. From innovative fundraising strategies and effective team management to self-care practices and leadership insights, we're here to provide you with practical strategies that you can apply to your life and work. My goal is to empower you, elevate your leadership, and engage your heart in all that you do. I want to help you navigate the unique challenges of the nonprofit sector with confidence and resilience, so you can continue to create meaningful change in the world. So whether you're driving to a meeting, taking a break, or winding down for the day, tune in and join us on this journey. Together, we'll discover what it truly means to lead with heart. Thank you for being here. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lead with Heart podcast. This is your host, Haley Cooper, and I am very excited to have Alix from Lebec, a woman-owned and led firm that is setting a new benchmark in the industry. Specializing in creative and equitable solutions, Lebec offers a bespoke product known as Lebec Blueprint. This groundbreaking approach is revolutionizing how corporate brands, financial institutions, and entrepreneurs achieve their sustainability and impact objectives. With a presence both in the US and Europe, Lebec addresses global needs through creativity, innovation, and a strong commitment to equity and sustainability. Well, thank you so much for being here, Alix.
Thank you for having me, Haley. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Could you share a little bit behind the inspiration and vision behind founding a woman-owned and led firm in the finance and philanthropy sectors?
Absolutely. So I've been working in the philanthropy and sustainable finance space for about 20 years. That journey started at the World Bank in Paris in Southeast Asia, where I just really discovered my love of entrepreneurship and particularly the power of financial tools such as microfinance, and really making sure that underserved communities had access to the financial tools to be able to build a better future. And so fast forward, I found myself in New York at the Clinton Foundation, where I met entrepreneur Gary White and actor Matt Damon, who were merging their organizations to create water.org. I was very excited about what they were doing because essentially water.org was really trying to demonstrate to the world the power of microfinance in solving something like the global water crisis, and especially women in underserved communities were asking for these kinds of financial solutions. So I joined the organization to really build the business case around microfinance for water, and then created another organization with them called Water Equity, which is now an independent and successful global asset manager that has demonstrated the potential to invest in water in ways that generate financial and social returns. So Haley, along that journey, I had an immense opportunity to really immerse myself in the space of catalytic philanthropy and innovative finance, meaning by structuring these different funds and really mobilizing investors and philanthropists around these products, I just had a front row seat on all the ways in which philanthropy, debt, and equity could really come together creatively to address a market gap. And after 10 years of doing that, I was just really excited to bring those insights to the wider marketplace. So knowing that women are leading entrepreneurs, but are dramatically undervalued and underestimated across every asset class, I wanted to bring those insights to women who were reimagining or disrupting industries around the world, perhaps entrepreneurs who don't have a Matt Damon to really raise visibility of what they're doing. And I also wanted to bring these insights to financial institutions, corporations, foundations, who maybe were not connecting those dots. And we don't always see a lot of women driving financial and investment decisions. And so building a firm that would really bring amazing talent, women who had worked across the financial industry or as entrepreneurs, and who wanted to create this kind of change, build a global economy where we are truly using all the financial tools at our disposal creatively to solve these big challenges, was really the premise for launching Lebec. It was really my why. And today, I'm just very lucky. I have a team of 10 amazing women. We do have an incredible designer who is a man. So obviously, we believe in having diversity on the team. But Haley, I just found a lot of women who had navigated different kinds of institutions and wanted to create change in the way Lebec was aspiring to do through an organization that was a third party and was really coming in to bring those kinds of insights.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story and how you got started and where you are today. And you mentioned this idea of catalytic philanthropy, and that is a new term for me. So can you explain a little bit more about what that means?
Absolutely. I often say that catalytic philanthropy is smart philanthropy. Why? We live in a time where the great challenges that we are facing, whether it's lack of access to safe water or it's the essential energy transition or lack of affordable housing, lack of access to quality and affordable healthcare, these are all collectively trillion-dollar issues, right? And so philanthropy will never be able to solve these issues by itself. But philanthropy is unique in that it is the only form of financing in the world that can truly take risk, experiment, and help correct market failures or help create conditions by which then more traditional forms of investment capital can come in and play a role. Now, it doesn't mean that every problem in the world will be solved by attracting investment capital to solve it, right? I want to be very careful in saying that, but there is a very sizable opportunity around using philanthropy in this way where we can dramatically accelerate our impact. And water, at least in my experience, really demonstrates that. And that was what was so powerful about my experience at water.org and water equity, because we know today that 2.2 billion people still lack access to safe water, which is a terrible statistic. And while there's different interventions that are needed, there are hundreds of millions of people who would absolutely pay for better and more sustainable water services if they just had access to a small microcredit loan that would enable them to pay a local water utility to build a more stable water connection in their home. And actually, the monthly water bill from that water utility is significantly cheaper than what they are already paying for water in terms of time lost, right? Women and girls around the world waste 200 million hours a day collectively looking for safe water, or they're paying too much for water from a local water vendor that can charge whatever he or she wants, or they're paying in terms of their health or loss in time and economic opportunities. So the market failure here is thinking that underserved communities can't afford that monthly water utility bill, which is actually much cheaper for them. So there was something so profound about convincing microfinance institutions that there was a demand out there, primarily from women in underserved communities who wanted access to a $150 or $225 loan to get that water connection. And so philanthropy played a really critical role, right? We at water.org used philanthropy to provide a small grant to these microfinance institutions, small banks, big and large, in saying you can use this grant as startup capital, right? To go out and build the right loan product, hire the right loan officer, make sure that economics of the loan match with the products that the household want to buy, go out in these communities and assess the market demand. But then once that wheel is in motion, then you go ahead and mobilize the commercial capital you always would to provide that microloan. So fast forward, what the water.org example demonstrated is with $200 million in philanthropy raised to jumpstart this process, to get these loan portfolios going, these microfinance institutions attracted $5 billion in commercial capital to provide microloans for water. Those loans are repaid at the rate of 97%. Once they're repaid, that institution can make another loan. So I'm using this example, Haley, because it's a great example of where philanthropy came in to jumpstart a process, to prove an innovation, to correct a market failure, and then investment capital stepped in a very sizable and scalable way and made philanthropy even more effective. Because again, once those microloans are provided and they're financed by commercial capital, every time they're reimbursed or repaid, that financial institution provides another loan. And you don't need more philanthropy to make that happen. And so there's so many ways across different industries where this is possible. And so catalytic philanthropy has a real opportunity to really be aligned with what is needed in the sector, which is more innovation, more disruption, more flexibility, because there are many ideas like this that just need some time to get going, and where then financial markets can step in with much larger sums of capital to scale these solutions.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And the way that it's able to actually transform on the ground level. And a lot of my listeners, I would imagine, are probably more from grassroots organizations that are very local to the community. And when they hear like Matt Damon or water.org and like $2 million, right, raised
200 million.
200 million, right? They're probably like, how in the world would I be able to tap into that? And I think there obviously are ways that they can. So are there specific indicators or criteria that organizations should consider when exploring this philanthropic approach? And how can it be more accessible to those on the ground grassroots organizations?
It's a great question. And it goes back to something I shared at the beginning. I like saying catalytic philanthropy is smart philanthropy because philanthropy has about $550 billion to its name. There's at least $100 trillion in global capital markets, right? And again, we're trying to solve trillion-dollar challenges. So we've just got to get creative with all the financial tools that we have. And there are pathways and avenues. But at the same time, it doesn't mean this is always the blueprint for everything that we do. So we also work with some great grassroots nonprofits that are innovative in different ways, which also I think really fits the mold of how we think about catalytic philanthropy. Because catalytic philanthropy at its essence is also really about how can I use those resources in the most innovative and efficient ways, and in ways that along the way have trickle down effect where maybe government policies are shaped that are going to unlock more government resources. Or maybe we have created an avenue or a foundation for then local businesses to be able to take off with more traditional forms of financing. So it's really understanding the needs of the communities and how you can use philanthropy more efficiently and in innovative ways. So perhaps for an organization, for instance, I'm thinking about here, the Clio Institute here in Miami. The Clio Institute's really unique because they work at the grassroots level with youth activists on integrating climate education in our school systems at a time where this is so important. And at the macro level, they have been instrumental in shaping key policies, including the Inflation Reduction Act, and being an environmental justice advisor to the White House on key environmental issues. For them, catalytic philanthropy has been about how do we use philanthropy in the most innovative and effective ways to make sure our education system is embedding this in everything that we do? How do we provide resources where then those educators can take this and go out and educate their students in their communities? And how do we nudge government to do more and nudge policies in a direction that will hopefully then unlock more, significantly more financial resources for climate? And so for your listeners, I think it's just really understanding the market dynamics that are aligned with the problem that you're trying to solve and how you can use philanthropy to really create conditions by which then those market dynamics can step in and help scale ideas. I hope that makes sense, but it's just, philanthropists are also looking for these kinds of opportunities. So for instance, you have business models today like a Sensei that is embedding financial literacy in schools as well. And because it's set up as a for-profit, but it's also tied to a donor-advised fund, it can raise both for-profit and nonprofit capital. And if Sensei is successful in raising $2 million to further embed its financial literacy education program in schools and across financial institutions, you have a donor advised fund that is backed by the United Nations Development Program that will come in with $12 million in 0% debt financing. Without going into the full details of this whole model, what I'm trying to get at is there are really innovative ways to unlock other forms of financing while still being really tied to an approach that is truly meeting the needs of grassroots communities.
Imagine a fundraising partner that not only helps you raise more money, but also supports you in retaining your donors. A partner that helps you raise funds both online and on location so you can grow your impact faster. That's DonorBox, a comprehensive suite of tools, services, and resources that give fundraisers just like you a custom solution to tackle your unique challenges, helping you achieve the growth and sustainability your organization needs, helping you help others. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. Yeah, I love those examples. Thank you so much for sharing. You mentioned something, and this was mentioned in the intro, is that you have a blueprint to unlock these ways of accessing financing and philanthropy. So can you share what specifically goes into the blueprint and what methods you use to ensure those sustainable outcomes? And then what is also when you talk about outcomes, what is the accountability of the organization receiving that financing?
Absolutely. So what Lebec does best is across 4 areas. It doesn't mean we always bring this package to everybody, but it does really define what we do. So those 4 areas includes developing a growth strategy with you, right? That's going to help scale your idea, your organization, and innovation. Second, it's helping you develop a really strong value proposition for key audiences that you're trying to bring on board for that growth strategy. 3 is helping you think about how that growth strategy, that innovation can be really anchored around a sustainable business model and diversified revenue streams. Is impact investing relevant to what you're trying to do? Should we be thinking about a for-profit entity? And then 4, who are the key stakeholders that you need at your table to really make this happen? And working at the intersection of those 4 things is really how Lebec shows up in a lot of the work that it does, that we do with our clients. And so for us, it was really important to bring that package of services, because a lot of times you'll have an organization that, has done relatively well. They have an idea of which kinds of funders they want to bring on board, but their value proposition is not clear. We're so deep into the what and the how that we don't understand the why. And we are literally living in a time, right, where there are crises every day. People's attention is really hard to get, especially for maybe more than 10 minutes. So how do you go out and set a sense of urgency and really explain, why is this issue important? Why is your organization uniquely positioned to address it? Why should people care? Then secondly, in relation to the blueprint, it's really being able to articulate, so what are all of the financial tools at our disposal? So recently, for instance, we worked with a great company in the UK, a $40 billion company called Reckitt, that is a global consumer care company, global consumer goods. And we came in and we looked at all of the financial assets available to this company. We looked at the impact investing work they had done in the past, and we developed a roadmap that really built a business case on how Reckitt could utilize all of those financial assets in the most creative and complementary ways to increase the value that it's providing to its consumers, stakeholders, right, communities around the world, and how it could elevate its impact. And then, of course, in terms of accountability, if Reckitt takes that strategy and starts activating it, then it's really creating a reporting mechanism through which how those finances are used, the returns, both financially and socially, are captured to go back and say, this was a strategy that worked, and here's how we delivered it and what it generated. And so I think, Haley, to answer your question, those two layers really define that blueprint, right? We work best at the intersection of those four things. And then more specifically, when we do work with a client, it's really being able to dive in and see all of the financial tools that are at their disposal. What are the regulatory changes that are happening in the world? What are the kinds of deals that they could participate in that would really help them augment their impact? And it's bringing that together as a strong business case so that our audience can also help educate their leadership internally as to why this could be an avenue on how to move forward. And I just want to say, Haley, the reason why I get really passionate about this is because when I was building water equity with this amazing team, and there was truly an evolution. We started with a very simple equity fund, and then our products got more sophisticated to help meet investors where they were and pull in different types of audiences. There was a fund that we developed that was what I would say a 1-to-1 debt to equity ratio. So just imagine raising as much debt as equity. It was a $50 million fund. And we also added in a $5 million philanthropic first loss guarantee. Using those capital tools creatively and with their unique characteristics enabled us to attract the first $20 million investment from the US government in water. It allowed us to attract the first $5 million investment from Bank of America in water. And so I just think there's so many opportunities for critical stakeholders to be able to bring that puzzle together. And that is the essence of our blueprint, is helping them see where those possibilities are.
Yeah, I think that's so important what you said about your blueprint in terms of like value proposition. I think, like you said, a lot of people struggle with, well, we're not getting in front of all of these people, but it's because there's not that solid value of why you should be there, right? And you have to be confident in that why and show up for that why. And I also think that business model piece is really important, especially for my leaders. Like, they're like, we're a nonprofit, we're not a business. Like, you have to operate like a business and have that business mindset for that growth strategy to be able to scale. So I think all of those pieces really play together. And you mentioned, yes, once you had all those pieces together, you were able to form strategic partnerships. So what do these partnerships look like, and how do these partnerships enhance the impact, and like what should be included in these partnerships?
Yeah, no, that's such a great question. So to answer that, I want to go back to something that we always share with our clients, which is, what is the problem that you are trying to solve? What is the why behind your organization? So if your why is we truly believe, such as water.org, that we can solve the global water crisis in our lifetime, then what is the greatest barrier to making that happen? And how are you uniquely positioned to address that? So for instance, for the work of water.org and water equity, it was really identifying that capital remains the greatest barrier to solving water, right? Solving the global water crisis by 2030 is $1 trillion opportunity. It needs $1 trillion at least in financing. So for the water.org team, it was identifying how microfinance institutions could play a role as part of one piece of the puzzle where philanthropy plugs in. And then it was really understanding, how do we build from here? Can we start investing in water utilities, in toilet product manufacturers, because water and sanitation are so tied? Maybe we weave in water as part of affordable housing loans for different households. What I'm trying to get at is, as the organization started to really strategically shape its strategy around a very well articulated vision, it gave an opportunity to then go to a financial institution like Bank of America and say, here is how your financing can help dramatically improve progress towards solving the global water crisis. And here's why you should care. And so the reason we were also able to do that is because we understood how water was a priority for an institution like a Bank of America. And so it's really about understanding what these different kinds of organizations that you're hoping to pull along are trying to achieve, what their priorities are, and how your vision and how you're trying to solve this problem can bring a really efficient and exciting solution that is aligned with what they are trying to do. So you're also solving a problem for them, right? You're adding value for them. And I think that's something sometimes we lose perspective on, where when we're out there raising money, it can very much feel like, hi, my name is Alix. I work for water.org. We're trying to solve the water crisis. You should really fund us because we have great programs. Versus, hi, tell me a little bit more, like, what's your priority right now? What is your board of directors asking you to do? What have you seen succeed? What hasn't worked? What kinds of partnerships are you trying to build? What countries are you trying to do more in? Well, that's interesting because we have programs in those 4 countries. And by the way, we have been able to use philanthropy really creatively in those markets where, with $1 million, we can reach X amount of people instead of a smaller amount of people, because our model works in a way where microfinance institutions are pulling in commercial capital to solve this issue. Again, I don't want to get in the weeds, and water.org is one example, but it's just really understanding, what are these organizations looking for? Why are they the ones who should be at your table to help you execute this vision? And how are you bringing something that is really helping them achieve their goals, right? You're in it together. It's a partnership. There's mutual learning. It gets me to one more point, Haley. This is also why it's really important that we challenge the narrative around funding for overhead and programs, right? Funding should be focused on outcomes. In the venture capital industry, we pour billions of dollars into visionary founders that have a wild idea, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, we are taking a bet on that founder and that vision. Social change is trying to solve some really big issues, right, for everyone. So we should be taking a bet on the founders and the talent that are part of these organizations that are going to execute this vision, these programs. And so centering funding around the outcomes that we achieve, around how my philanthropy can be more efficient and catalytic, and again, is creating an environment whereby maybe the market can at some point trigger in some capital, or maybe the government will add in some financing, but really focusing on the outcomes versus having 20% here, 15% there, can help nonprofits really operate more efficiently like a business. And all of that is tied to who you want at your table to achieve your vision.
Hey there, podcast family. If you're like me and deeply committed to improving your leadership skills and fostering better connections with your team, I've got something truly amazing to share with you. I'm proud to introduce the EMC Masterclass, something I talk about often as a certified trainer. It's an incredible program developed by the renowned Dr. Lola Gershfeld, an organizational psychologist and corporate emotional connection expert. You might remember her from a podcast episode where she shared invaluable insights into the world of emotional connection. Dr. Gershfeld's EMC Leaders courses are designed for anyone working with people, whether you're a manager, supervisor, team leader, educator, coach, mentor, or a team member. This program is truly for everyone looking to enhance their communication and collaboration skills to raise more revenue for their mission. Now, let me tell you why the EMC Masterclass is a game changer. Dr. Gershfeld's groundbreaking emotional connection process has been integrated into top universities' curriculum and recognized by international organizations like ICF, HRCI, and SHRM. Humans are wired to seek emotional safety, and when we feel safe, we're more likely to take risks, share innovative ideas, and collaborate effectively. The EMC process is the catalyst for creating that emotional safety within your team. The virtual EMC Masterclass consists of 8 modules with 4 hours of expertly recorded material, 13 quizzes to reinforce your learning, and a workbook filled with activities for offline practice and something I still refer to daily. Ready to become an emotional connection master? Dr. Gershfeld is offering an exclusive detail for our podcast listeners. Use the code LEADWITHHEART to enjoy a generous 10% discount on the EMC Masterclass. Head over to emcleaders.com and enroll in the EMC Masterclass today. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I know that conversation is going wild, at least on my LinkedIn, and I think it is such an important conversation to have because nonprofits are like, oh, well, we're like over 30% overhead, but you have to invest in the people to be able to deliver on the outcomes that you say. So it's really important to flip that narrative on its head. And I love how you talking about the outcomes, not like 20% here, 80% here. Like it all matters and it all goes towards moving that mission forward. So it's not like about a percentage game, it's about an investment game. And investing in, like you said, taking a risk on the founder and the mission and making sure that they feel supported across the board to move that mission forward.
Exactly. And it's just social change. Again, when I think about the work of the Clio Institute and how instrumental it is that we equip our youth with the tools, the knowledge, the education they need to step out in the world and build a climate resilient economy. Same way we need to be shaping policies locally, nationally, globally in ways that are really taking into account the true costs, risks, and impact associated with climate. At the same time as we are trying to change the way food is produced and consumed so that it's more sustainable over the long run, as we're trying to prevent a scenario whereby by 2025, half of the world's population will be living in extreme water scarcity. This is the path that we're on. We can't do that if philanthropy is stuck in a box with false metrics. I almost call it false math. What are we working towards? If I was the CEO of a foundation, I would be really excited about backing visionaries who have incredible teams that represent diverse perspectives and are tied to understanding what communities need, that leaders who are thinking creatively again about what are all the tools at my disposal, right? And how do I best leverage them in a time where our impact and what we're working towards is urgent and so ambitious. And I would be looking for the ways that I could be using my grant capital and my endowment to really support those ideas. I don't really care if you're spending $20 on pencils or new laptops. I really care about how fast we can get to real transformational impact that has a remote chance of creating a different kind of reality, a different future 5 to 10 years down the line. And then the other thing I'd say is we need to be patient. I think we're still in this race to see immediate results right away. There's still a lot of fear in philanthropy of failure, and that has to change. Like, how do we embed that in a new narrative that failing, reiterating, innovating has to be part of the journey, obviously in responsible ways? And how does that become also part of setting the right accountability measures? Again, if we are working together, Haley, to reach 100 million people with water, and it means that as part of that journey, we might spend a year trying a couple of things and then identifying out of 3 which one is the best one, that's great, right? We're moving the needle versus going through very long proposal processes and making sure that every metric is perfect. And again, saying you can't use that to hire talent. You can only use that to do this. I'm creating barriers when really there's already so many barriers in being able to generate impact that I want you to dedicate your time, your mindset to addressing those barriers externally.
Yeah, and I think something that I want to double tap on this idea of fear of failure. And I think it comes back to that accountability and transparency, right? Like, we're going to have hard years. Not everything, the world is constantly changing. We're not always going to meet our outcomes. But what I tell nonprofit organizations is that invites a conversation with your partners to be able to say, hey, this didn't work out because of X, Y, and Z. And this is what the cost is to then make that change. And that includes that true cost. And I think that's such an important shift of we have to take risks. We're trying to solve, like you said, the biggest issues in the world. If you don't innovate, if you don't take risks, like you're not going to move the needle forward. And so I think, yeah, changing that fear of failure, that scarcity mindset to be able to take those risks and then invite that conversation in.
Exactly. Now, I think that's absolutely right. And I've been having these conversations in philanthropy for a really long time. And certainly not just me, so many experts in this industry. And I really hope that as we are getting closer and closer to 2030, which is as a deadline for the Sustainable Development Goals, that we just really start thinking differently about all the financial tools that are available to us and how we can creatively bring them together. Again, philanthropy on its own is not going to solve these issues, right? We have to be thinking creatively about where there's the opportunity to bring in other forms of financing when it makes sense. When are there opportunities to, again, maybe create a foundation for sustainable business models to come along the way later on, right? So for instance, Acumen does this so well, right? They'll come in with high risk but low cost equity dollars to back businesses that are solving social challenges. And they will give that business a long runway, maybe 10 years before they can be commercial, because they are operating in markets that are so broken that it's going to take time. But Acumen understands the importance of doing this because, again, in a world where 85% of the world's population lives in emerging economies and everything is interconnected, it's interdependent, it's important to invest in great energy-focused businesses in East Africa or in South Asia. And you have examples where Acumen, for instance, invested in a business like Sun Culture that provides water pumps to smallholder farmers that are funded by renewable energy. Acumen came in as an early backer, right, when Sun Culture was not yet commercial. And fast forward, now Sun Culture has attracted a Series B round from investors such as Eric Schmidt and Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix. And so it just shows you, again, philanthropy can be innovative. It can do things creatively where we can be more catalytic.
Yes, I love that. And, if a listener is here like, yes, I want to tap into that. I want to be more innovative, be more creative with the way we access philanthropy. Like, what's one thing that you would tell them as you wrap up to take a step today?
Oh, that's such a good question. My first comment would be what you're doing is really important. So be tenacious and be resilient. This work is hard. But we are also at a pivotal moment where backing great ideas, great solutions that are addressing these big needs in the world, whether it's in your home community or you're solving a global problem. Philanthropy and our global capital markets are finding opportunities to steer more and more financing, more funding towards these ideas. And so my first advice would be really make sure you have the right value proposition for the audiences you're trying to bring on board. And make sure that value proposition is really accentuating why the issue you're working towards is a number one priority and why you are the organization that is uniquely positioned to address that issue in a very compelling way. Doesn't mean you're going to solve everything by yourself. We need each other, right? We need to collaborate. Really make sure the value proposition accentuates the unique value of your organization. And thirdly, think deeply. If you could have 5 to 6 people at your table, who are they? And I know that in growing water.org and building water equity, that table for us included foundations like the Skoll Foundation, the IKEA Foundation, and the Hilton Foundation. And it included key financial institutions like Bank of America and the International Development Finance Corporation. And it included that woman who takes out that microloan, right? That was our table. And I think thinking about who's at that table for you is going to do a lot in helping you really hone in on what the right pitch is and how that's going to set you up to be successful and along the way have a sustainable organizational model to address this challenge.
Yes, I love that advice. Well, if people want to follow you and the work that you do, where can they find you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn as Alix Lebec. You can also find me on Instagram at Alix Lebec. You can also follow Lebec on LinkedIn and Instagram as well.
Well, thank you so much. This has unlocked a whole new perspective for me on the topic of philanthropy and financing, and I am just so grateful for your insight.
Thank you so much for having me, Haley. It was wonderful speaking with you, and I'm just really grateful to have been part of the conversation.
If you have valued these stories or learned something from what you've heard, please share this podcast episode or follow me on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your support, and together we can build a better community and world.